Preston Smith, who should be back on Monday. We're still dealing with the dogs. Yeah. In just a moment, I'll speak with Joel Fitzgibbon, the Shadow Agriculture Minister, who's Barnaby Joyce's opposite number. In fact, let's do that now. Joel Fitzgibbon, good afternoon. Welcome to the show. How are you?
Thanks, Brian. Good to be with you.
That's the way. How do you reckon? How would you rate the way Barnaby Joyce has handled the Depp dog saga?
Generously giving him a 2 out of 10.
2 out of 10. That well. What did he do wrong?
Well, you've got to start on the premise that, as serious as these things can be, the odds of Johnny Depp's dog having rabies is pretty remote. Now, that's not to say that we don't have to have a very, very robust system, and we do. But remember, we have a risk-based system too, Brian. Not everything that comes into the country is tested. We do it randomly. We'd love to do every individual item in person, but it just can't happen. We just don't have the resources. And any of your...
but it's pretty clear that Depp knew exactly what he was walking into, and they've done whatever they needed to do to get the dogs out of the plane undetected.
Well, that's possibly true, and, I've been a minister, indeed I've been the Agriculture Minister, and I know how this works. You get an oral or written submission from your department saying, we've got a problem, Minister. A couple of dogs have got into the country without our knowledge, and it's a serious breach of our quarantine laws. And as Minister, what I do is seek assurance that everything possible is being done to investigate the thing properly, and when we work out what went wrong, that remedial policies are put in place to make sure it, as best we can, it never happens again.
What did go wrong?
Well, I don't know, because Barnaby Joyce hasn't bothered to tell us. Rather than, feel all embarrassed about it and be on the back foot and do his best to explain why he, as the Minister, failed his country, because the buck stops with him. He raced out to the cameras to big note himself and, attack Johnny Depp and his dogs, and of course threatened to kill them, which is pretty extraordinary. And, completely...
What language would you have used to reinforce the same message then, to get that across? Here's your ultimatum, Mr. Depp. You either leave the country with the dogs or we euthanize them.
Well, Brian, it should never have been a matter for the media. I mean, as Minister, I would have, banged my fist lightly on the table to my officials and said, well, find out what went wrong, and let's make sure when we find out what it was, that it can't happen again.
A listener phoned through Joel...
There's no need to go to the... make an international embarrassment of our country. I don't know...
Has he done that?
...what it was about.
So, but you're claiming that Barnaby's made an international embarrassment of Australia?
Well, of course he has. This mad minister in Australia, down under, threatening to kill Johnny Depp's dogs because Johnny Depp didn't go through the system. I mean, it's pretty extreme.
But isn't it up to us to make sure... I mean, people will always go out of their way to try and break the rules or flout the rules if they think they can get away with it. Isn't it up to us to make sure that they're not able to do that?
Well, you think they're all shaking their boots in California? I mean...
Well, what's going to happen now, Joel? You know how Hollywood works. You're a man plugged into the world. Johnny Depp goes back and says, hey guys, it's really easy to get your dogs into Australia. Here's how you do it. And suddenly we've got an influx of, Paris Hilton's bringing in small fluffy white animals in their handbags.
Brian, if I was a minister, I would have demanded to be investigated. I would have then in turn demanded it be fixed, and that would have been the end of it, and hopefully we would have had a more robust process as a result. The media did not need to be involved. And,
but once the media is involved, it's a juicy story, Joel. It's got all the ingredients. It's got Hollywood royalty. It's got small, very cute animals. It's got red-faced ministers running around threatening to euthanize them. I mean, what more do you need for a cracking global yarn?
We all find it very, very funny, but I'm not sure it's done Australia's reputation.
No, I'm absolutely certain it hasn't done us any good at all. What are we going to have to get to the position, Joel, where anybody arriving on a private plane will have to go through the regular customs and immigration screening that the rest of us go through?
Well, I suppose that's a possibility. That might take more resources than the current system. I'm not sure.
Okay, well, should we put a dog, as a listener suggested, just literally 15 minutes ago, a listener, Danny, suggested we send a dog into all the private planes because the dog sure would have sniffed out another dog.
We could sell tickets to the dog fight. But the key point here, Brian, is this is a massive distraction on Barnaby Joyce's part. Instead of arguing about his failings and the failings of the system, we're arguing about whether the dog should be put down or not. I mean, it's just rather bizarre. I mean, maybe he should get a 10 out of 10 for distraction.
Distraction from what?
Well, from his own failings. I mean, the buck stops. We had a breakdown here. And
Colin, I was hoping you were going to say this is all Barnaby running around to distract from the budget, because that would have been a classic.
The budget. No, you thought I was going to say, that might have been part of the strategy too. Let me say, Brian, we had a big blue in the Parliament this week about Barnaby Joyce's attempt to abolish the position of Inspector General for Biosecurity. That's what we now call quarantine.
Mm-hmm.
He's the last cop on the beat. You rely upon an independent inspector who looks at these things, things that are going wrong. He wanted to get rid of that this week.
We'd have Scottish Terriers and all sorts of terriers getting into the country without that.
I won that war in the Parliament, and the Inspector General remains in good place. And we'll probably be looking at this issue.
Okay, so all right, could we have come up with a better solution here? Now, it's my contention. I'm sure you didn't hear my opening words, but it's my contention that Barnaby Joyce has had just about enough of Johnny Depp. There was the issue with the monkey. The monkeys that were coming. Okay, look, they tried to bypass the system as best they could. They deadlines that they had to meet. It was a pretty nasty argument behind the scenes that was largely kept out of the media. But I know it happened, and Barnaby I think, is not well disposed to Depp, and maybe Depp's not particularly well disposed to Barnaby either.
Envy, Ryan.
Maybe there's... look, I don't think it's that. I think it's just Barnaby's had enough of the bloke trying to break our rules.
Barnaby is a sensationalist and a populist. He likes to create a headline, and he certainly did that, and he works on the basis that 60 or 70% will probably be against him, but he's a natty and he needs a lesser percentage than that. It's given him a bit of fame for a couple of days, and that's what he craves.
Will it cost us any future movie productions, do you think?
Oh, look,
I know it's not your portfolio area, but...
I like to think not. I think the Americans and others will be scratching their head in bewilderment, and they'll be talking to bars in Los Angeles tonight and Hollywood tonight, but look, I don't think a multi-million-dollar decision about where to set a movie is going to be made on the basis of Johnny Depp's encounter with Barnaby Joyce.
No, the reality of Depp flying out of the country tonight is that there is an entire film crew sitting around that have been re-corralled to start shooting again because he's back in the country, and they're not going to get paid.
Is that true? His departure is unscheduled, is it? I wasn't aware of...
No, well, see, remember he damaged his hand, okay? He had an accident. I think he was fishing or something with Mick Doohan, and he damaged his hand, and he had to fly out of the country to get some treatment, so production stopped. He'd only just flown back into the country with the dogs that was the kick-off of all this drama. So he's flown back to resume shooting. The cast and the rest of the crew have been hauled back into the production sets up there on the Gold Coast. And now that if he does leave the country tonight as scheduled, in about 3 hours from now, that production shuts down until he decides to return.
Well, if that's true, Barnaby Joyce really does have some explaining to do. I mean, if that's the punishment, it is completely out of proportion.
Okay, could we have then Joel Fitzgibbon, Shadow Agriculture Minister, said to Johnny Depp, whack the dogs in quarantine for 20 days or 30 days or whatever the regulations say, and then you can pay us a fine to get them out? Would that have been a reasonable solution?
I think that's a reasonable solution. You mitigate the risk by quarantining them immediately. You determine what went wrong, and if he's broken the law, well, apply a penalty. But shutting down a multi-million-dollar set is, as I said, completely out of proportion.
Well, that's what's happened. That's exactly what's happened, because he gave Depp an ultimatum, basically: leave the country or kill the dogs, one or the other.
Well, on that basis, Brian, if Tony Abbott hasn't already done so, he should be dragging Barnaby Joyce in today and having a very, very firm word with him.
Well, we'll see what happens, but the word from the Depp camp is they're out of here at 6 o'clock tonight.
Good on you, mate.
Okay, mate. Thanks, Joel. Joel Fitzgibbon, the Shadow Agriculture Minister, they're not real happy with the way Barnaby Joyce has handled this. What do you think? Has he done the right thing? Or is it just an international embarrassment? I understand why Barnaby's kind of said what he said. Now, he uses intemperate language from time to time. I think we all know that. Barnaby says things in a way that is a little more outrageous than the average politician does. But again, I can't bypass this idea that Barnaby and Depp have form. There's a background there. There's more to this than meets the eye, is what I'm trying to say. It's 14 and a half to 3. Let's take one quick call here. We'll take a break.